Hello, everyone. If you are joining us right now, we'll get started very shortly. Here, we're just waiting for a couple more minutes just so people can grab their lunch, join in the stream. But yeah, stay tuned. Hello again, everyone. If you're just joining in on our stream, I just want to let you know we'll get started here very shortly. Just gonna wait a couple more minutes so people can grab their lunch and join in. Stay tuned. All right, just gonna get here. We'll get started here in just a moment. Just one more minute. All right, I think we could probably get started at this point, right, Claudia?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today, and good afternoon or good morning wherever you are. I wanted to thank you all for taking your time, taking your lunch, and joining me and Claudio here. My name is Jordan, and I'll be the producer for today. I have the lovely opportunity of assisting the wonderful Claudio as our speaker. Claudio is a technical director here at Improving, and Claudio is known for many things here. One of which is being like the go-to expert for quality testing. I know in his free time he's playing a ton of tennis. We play together, though it's been a little while. And then he also loves to ride his bike at the track, and he does a lot of cool things around that. Um, Today he will be going over like user stories, and how we can use them more effectively, how we can integrate them better with our development process, and how overall like to write better user stories. So without any further delay, Claudio, take it away.
Awesome. Will do. Thanks, Jordan. Appreciate it. It's pretty cool. It's from this background, it looks like I'm talking to everybody from up above, right? It's so bluish. It's beautiful. And it's not a fake background. It's just the wall here. It's pretty nice. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. You'll see on your screen there that QR code and a little URL there. It's gonna come back up at the end of the talk. I'm gonna be asking you for your feedback. Like, did you enjoy the talk? What have you liked about it? How I could improve this talk? And maybe you're gonna be interested in having a copy of that slide deck to show, to other people about things that hopefully you've learned today. So this is gonna be the way to have that direct connection between us. So let me move forward to the next slide. You have also my email address if you would like to connect with me through that channel as well. In my blog, lasalo.net, where I write like a lot of the content that I'm going to be sharing here. You can find different variations or bits and pieces spread throughout my blog, because that's how my talks come around. I start like writing about certain things, putting my thoughts together, and then I gather them and transform them into a talk. You can see like some of the areas of interest that I have. I've been writing software for about 30 years now. It's been a while, playing all kinds of roles and different types of tech stacks and things like that. So you can see like my areas of passion there. And as Jordan mentioned, riding motorcycles and making music. I try to, live a full life if I can, making it interesting, right? Besides all the interesting things that we do with software as well. So why me here, right? Why is this guy who has mostly a software development background, like a coder, programmer, developer? I've been called all these things over the years, right? Full stack, front end, back end, it's been changing. I've been seeing this changing over the last 3 decades or so. So why me? Why am I the one here to talk about user stories? And on the description of this talk, we say this is a talk for not just developers, which some people might say, why developers, but also business analysts, product owners, UX designers, people involved with QA practices. Why me here? And I'll explain why. I'm going to give you the feedback, the background. So besides writing software, building software as a developer for about 30 years, I have also engaged with other practices, related practices, such as automated testing, right? Writing all kinds of automated tests, unit tests, integration tests, end-to-end tests, doing test-driven design or test-driven development, doing BDD, behavior-driven development. All these things have become something that I really hone in, that I've been doing for like 17 years or so now. I've played the role of product owners in a few projects, so seeing things from that side of the equation. I have been a team lead for many teams over the at least like the last 2 decades. That's been a big thing for me as well. I've played the agile coach type of role, like helping teams understand agile, understand Scrum, bridging the gap between the development team, the business, and what lies in between those two sides. And the one thing that has glued it all together was user stories. So user stories was like where we went from, as an agile coach, how we're thinking about planning our backlog, where we're populating the backlog with user stories. As a team lead, what are the stories that we're working on, that we're pushing forward? As a product owner, seeing the vision, prioritizing, right? And then when it comes to the tactical, how do we actually get this done? How do we write our automated tests? What tests do we even automate? When does it make sense to write tests? Sometimes, because people refer to me as like the test guy, which seems like I always do TDD for everything. I write tests for everything. Well, like, no, it's a tool, right? There's a place and a time to do it, and reasons why you would choose one approach over the other. So that's why me here, and how user stories connected all of these roles. As I said, when I played every single one of these roles, user stories have been like the glue, has been the glue between all of that. So user stories, the way that we normally learn them, like the training wheels of user story, if you look it up on the internet, if you pick up a book, if you go to some sort of training for user stories, we're going to learn always the same template. As some type of user, right? I want to do something so that something, right? That's the template. And then I have seen like the examples, all the examples that I'm going to be showing here, they came from real world experience. And I've seen stories like this. As the system, like, are we writing? So our users, they are the system. Are we writing software for the system? Like we're creating little robots, maybe? Like that already like does not resonate with me, right? I want to remove duplicate entries from my address database tables. Why does it matter if we have duplicate entries in the table there? Oh, because it does not conform with the normalization rules of database design. Is like, well, but who cares? I mean, why is that important? Right? So that I don't have duplicates. Again, Why does it matter if we have duplicates? Maybe there's a case where we do have duplicates because we are optimizing for other things, right? For performance in queries, certain queries, maybe duplicates will actually help us accomplish the ultimate goal of whatever it is that we're trying to offer. But a user story like that, it's really not a user story. As we keep like having the conversations, because if we just pick up a story like this and start working on it without asking, hey, why is that important? You may overlook the important thing about the value that you're trying to offer for the people that we're trying to serve. So the same story could be written in the following manner. As a marketing manager, okay, now we can picture a person, right, who plays a specific role to whom this story will yield some sort of value, or implementing the outcome of that story will bring some value to that person. I want to send direct mail with no duplicate addresses, right? So instead of talking about rows in a table in some database, we're talking about like certain business concepts here, or real world concepts. Direct mail, in that case, we don't want to send direct mail to duplicate addresses, because so that I have to save, so that I save on mailing costs of marketing initiatives. That speaks to the business more than database tables and yada, yada, yada. Because depending on the situation, maybe, yeah, you're going to send mail to a duplicate address because maybe the mail is targeting two different people who live at the same address. Maybe if that's a situation, yeah, you do want to have multiple, letters going out. For this case here, for the marketing initiative, they decided, no, we don't want that. We want to send only one. And that way we can also, save on mailing costs. So that makes a lot more sense, right? It actually promotes conversation with people who are involved into that, trying to solve that problem, to a business, to an organization. Now, a point that I've learned many years ago was that when we have a story like this, the most important thing of this story is the so that line, is the last line of the story, so that I save on mailing costs of marketing initiatives. That's the why we are paying anybody, or anybody's being paid to do that work. So why is that the last line of the story, right? It's like you're building up suspense to get to the climax of that story. It's like not that kind of story. The purpose of user stories is not that, right? To build a movie out of it. So I've learned many years ago to flip that around, where instead of having a so that as a last line, we start with that, the valuable thing. Start with why. If you've heard of the book, Simon Sinek's book, Start with Why, it's that what resonates with me. Start with the why thing. In order to save on mailing costs of marketing initiatives, that's our target. Oh, great. Who is, to whom is that important? Marketing managers. Because for other different people or roles or personas, they may have different motivations there, different interests behind this kind of feature. Here we're focusing on marketing manager, and then we say, I want to send direct mail, da, 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 right? Why is that important? I have sat in far too many planning meetings and backlog refinement meetings where people will go and essentially read out the story like this. As a marketing manager, I want to send direct mail with no duplicate addresses. And they spend like 30 minutes talking about the I want to part, and they never get to the so that. Like, well, you're telling me everything about what you want, but you're not helping clarify why you need that. Because if everybody has that common sense of why, now we're potentializing the problem solving capacity of the team working on it. So start with that, right? So if you don't know how to write a story, you only have to learn how to write that one line of the story in order to finish that sentence. It's amazing how hard it is to finish that sentence, because a lot of times people say, oh, we want this, we want that, but we don't understand why. So if we cannot articulate in one sentence why we need something, we have no business spending time creating databases and APIs and microservices and this, that, or the other. It's like we don't even know why we're doing any of that. So don't spend any time and effort into doing something like this. So always ask, when you look at a user story, you ask, how is this going to either save or make, insert whatever value here. So if it's a for-profit type of business, how is it going to either save money or make money? If it's maybe a nonprofit, you could say, how is this going to help to either save lives or make lives or make for better lives? Like whatever that value is, the user story has to link directly back to that. If it has no connection to that, then there's no purpose in being there. So I'm often asked, what about like technical debt and technical stories? Do we have user stories for that? Like, well, in my mind, the way I've learned is if you cannot articulate to a business, to an organization, to other people, why we need to pay off the technical debt, why we need to do that infrastructure thing that's very technical, then there's no way to sell that to somebody else, to go to the business and say, oh, we need to refactor that module and it's a technical thing. Like, what is the value? How is that work going to either save or make some sort of value? Whether that's going to be like directly influencing, say, revenue, or it could be just quality of life, knowing that, oh yeah, we are going to have people working on these features, maybe it's an epic, for 3 months. So in order to save development time, right, you can articulate it from that perspective because the business will understand that, oh, by doing that technical work, we're going to be saving development time, which is going to allow us to deliver the overall product earlier. Okay, go for it. That's why I call out for developers to think through these lenses. Instead of saying, oh, we need to pay off the technical debt. No, flip that around so that you can sell that idea to somebody else and get their buy-in, because you've articulated that you're not just thinking on the bits and bytes that you're writing there, but you're thinking from the business standpoint, the real world standpoint, the real people's standpoint, and not as the system I want to, like, no. That's the idea that I try to convey here. Good deal. Jordan, do we have any questions coming up so far?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have one that just came in actually from Scott over here. How often have you found that saving development sanity has been a value for stakeholders? The perceived value being employee retention.
Right. Yes. Yeah, you have it right there, like employee retention. So yes, there are companies, like we are very fortunate that we work at a company improving that we really value people a lot. So making sure that people are happy with what they're doing, they're being as effective as they can doing what they are doing. That is important. That does yield value, right? It may not be like you cannot cross like a direct link that goes from this to like money made, but it will get you there, right? Because it's part of that equation. So what I've learned over time is to identify these things, see it from like the people's perspective, the business perspective, and sell things through that that standpoint, because it's like it doesn't take much time for like a business to understand that, look, if your developers are very unhappy because of the situation of how the project is being handled, where it's like, well, we are always taking shortcuts for everything, no matter what, because we are always under the gun getting stuff done, but then that does not scale, right? And now what happens is they're going to grow so unhappy that now you're going to have to onboard new developers, which is going to lower your capacity, right? Because now every time you change members in your team, it's going to slow down the entire team every time you go through that process. So if you can articulate to the business why that is a problem and how you help with the employee retention, if you look at these things, like do look at the value, not just direct value, but also indirect value that you will get you the revenue that you need and the other benefits that you need out of this work through all of this foundational work with the people involved in the process. So yeah, how often? It's not often, right? Because unfortunately, not a lot of people actually care about people. But like at least for us, for improving, we end up like drawing people who also share this kind of value. So for that, I'm always like grateful. All right, cool. Great question. Thanks, Scott, for asking. So, I was asking what problems or problem are we trying to solve, right? So that's what the user stories should answer. What is the problem that we're trying to solve? Sometimes the solution does not involve writing code, right? Because it's very easy for developers to say, oh, this is a user story. Okay, I know the code to write. It's like, wait, maybe the solution to the problem does not involve writing code at all. Maybe it involves some integration work. Maybe it involves changing the process at the start. Because if the process is already flawed, are you going to write code to like what potentialize the problems that you have in that, or maximize the problems that you have in that process? That does not quite work. Or even like with the example there of like the marketing manager wants to save on marketing costs. Maybe somebody knows that it's like, oh no, after a certain threshold, like this number of letters that we send out, we get a discount, so it offsets, and we don't need to do any development work. We can just work, through other means to achieve that same result, right? So it's been part of my work as well to have developers understand that's like, hey, we do not, even though something comes as a user story, it does not mean necessarily that we need to write code for that. That is a problem we're trying to address. Let's look at the possibilities here. Do we need to write code? Can we reuse something that already exists? Can we buy some solution and integrate that solution here? Let's think about it, right? Let's talk about what's on the table. And I like this quote here from James Clear at the bottom. The hardest part of solving a problem is accurately defining it. So developers always say, we say that we are problem solvers, right? Well, if a developer cannot clearly articulate what problem the code that they are writing solve, well, you're not really solving a problem, right? If you cannot articulate in English what is the problem that you're solving through that code or that architecture that you're putting in place, you cannot do that, stop, right? You're wasting time and money, right? So developing this skill to define accurately the problem that you're trying to solve, because it's the hardest part. It is very hard. Finishing that in order to sentence in a user story, I stumble, and I keep seeing a lot of people stumbling through that, not finding the proper words to actually explain what the problem is. Common challenges that we face and we have development teams face, the way I've plotted that out here is 3 areas of problems. Skills and knowledge, maybe there is a gap there in skills, maybe the technology that we're supposed to be using, there's a gap, we don't know, we don't have that experience yet. Maybe knowledge of the industry, right? Maybe I've been like building software for 30 years, but I've never done anything, for example, for the medical industry. I have, but let's suppose I haven't done anything for the medical industry. There's a gap there, and there's some time for me to catch up to actually use my technology skills to serve that need of that industry. So that's one area. So challenges there. Another is around requirements, right? Where user stories might fit into it, even though like really user stories are not like requirements in the sense of the old school like use cases from the waterfall days where I say we require the system to do this, we require the system to do that. User stories are more like Let's have a conversation about the problem and then figure out how we're going to address that situation. As well as acceptance criteria, right? Sometimes we get a user story and we get, as developers are complaining, oh, we don't have enough acceptance criteria, or the acceptance criteria is so detailed that it's very hard to, get the big picture behind that. And then last but not least, time, right? It's never enough. We never have enough time to do whatever it is that we need to do. Now, here's what I've learned. The current skills or knowledge, if we have a gap there, we can always learn. Hopefully, we can always learn. As long as we live, we can learn. We can grow those. Doesn't happen overnight, but if you are intentional, like deliberate about identifying your gaps and finding ways to, fill those gaps, so we can address those kind of challenges. Requirements, we can collaborate. So instead of waiting on the product owner to give you like a rundown, bullet point by bullet point of everything that the system is required to do, well, let's collaborate, because maybe the product owner, the business analyst, they're also trying to figure that out. They don't know the answer to everything, right? Present the why to the team. Let's have the conversation. Let's put our minds together so that maybe next time you don't have to write as much details in that user story, or you will know what kind of details to put in the user story to make it easier for the development team to go in and say, oh, okay, I got it. This is similar to that other thing that we did. We had that other conversation. We experienced with that, experimented with that, the results we got, this and that. And then you potentialize your capacity in that manner. Time is the thing that's like, we all get the same 24 days a week, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That there's no making time, there's no finding time. That does not exist. But what we can do is to make better use of our time. So if we have practices in place to improve our technology skills, our industry knowledge, improve our user stories, our acceptance criteria, so that we know what we are building or why we are building it, and we can streamline that process, now we can make better use of our time. And that's very important. And quick tip, products are not usually built in one sprint. If you are building a product that you have to build it in one sprint, this talk is not for you, right? This is not designed for that. I don't think I've ever worked on any project that lasts a sprint or two. It's usually, it goes for at least a few sprints, right? So you learn over time. That's why we do, Agile, Scrum, we iterate, we try something, we reflect on what worked, what didn't, we make some slight modifications, same thing. Sprint one, we tried user stories written in this manner. Did it work? Well, we could do some work on like here or there. Okay, let's try that next time and keep iterating until eventually you're going to get to user stories. It's like, yeah, we're all on the same board, on the same page. Let's go. All right. I will be asking for questions in just a little bit. Just bear with me. Let me get over this one bit here. I've learned that there's a disconnect between vision and execution. Vision from the business perspective, like the business is, facing the world, the people, customers, providers, and all that. So they have a vision as to what they would like to accomplish. And then there's the execution. In our case, the IT team, where, we have people busy with figuring out what is the tech stack we're going to be using, what processes are we going to be using, the architecture, what are the performance considerations, what are the practices, are we going to do TDD, are we going to do pair programming, BDD, this, that, or the other, right? And I come from a time when we used to do pizza-driven development, as I say, where the business would hire developers and say, okay, you have 6 months to do this one thing. That's your, room where you're going to be working on this project. They close the door so you don't get out. And then every once in a while, they slide pizza under the door. And every 2 weeks or so, they come knock at the door and say, are we done yet? Are we done yet? Are we done yet? Right? I come from that kind of time. It sucks. I don't like it. I don't miss it. At some point, we switched that around, and I'll skip through this slide because it will come back. Like Scrum to the rescue, right? So we've learned with Scrum, and I've seen people teach it like this or even talk about it like this, like, oh, now we have the product owner that sits in between the two blocks there and works as a bridge. So I've heard, unfortunately, like product owners tell the development team, say, you don't have to worry about it, like understanding the business or talking to the business and to the stakeholders. I'll be the bridge. I'll tell you exactly what you need to know. That's not that great, right? The best visualization I've come up with this is like, yes, we have the product owner there as a mediator, right? As the glue between the two worlds here, but they all some sort like shift center where you have the stakeholders, the owner, the C-level executives, right? Coming to that common ground, and then the team, the Scrum team, which includes the software developers, the people like writing the code. It includes your QA folks, the people testing and making sure that the quality meets expectation. You have your UX designers. They're also part of your Scrum team, right? So we are all like coming together where there's not like a hard line. It's more of a gradient, right? The farther you go to each side, you're more into either the vision side of things or the execution side of things. When you go to the center, it's a little bit of a blend. That's where the idea of like in domain-driven design, having that ubiquitous language, where it's a language that it brings as much of the business lingo into the conversation, as well as bringing just enough of the technical aspects that are necessary for everybody to be on the same page, right? So having this kind of common ground for conversation. So this is the last slide before I ask for questions and then move on. A common question that I get from business folks, product owners, business analysts, is they ask me, hey, how can I get the best work out of my development team? Because there's a lot of like going back and forth. Like we give them some requirements, they spend, 2 sprints working on it, they come back, we look at it, it's nowhere near what we needed. They go back to the drawing board, they try something else, they come back. So there's like a lot of back and forth, and we are never like like anywhere near where we needed to be. What do we need to do? And some folks say, what language should I learn to best communicate with them? And I've had like product owners say, well, I've learned some SQL where I can write some queries. I can hold my own, like writing some SQL queries. Or I've learned a little bit of JavaScript since they are doing the thing in this Angular, this React thing, and they use TypeScript or JavaScript. So I've learned a little bit of that. And I say, that's good for you to empathize and create some sort of rapport with your developers. But at the end of the day, it does not help. My analogy is when people know or learn that I'm originally from Brazil, they're very nice and they learn how to say a few things in Brazilian Portuguese. They say, hey, olá, Cláudio, bom dia, como vai? And then it stops there, because if I start responding in Portuguese, they're not going to catch up. They're not going to keep up. I can just say, estou bem, I'm good. And that's it. That's where it ends. It does not help by having them learn a few words or sentences of a spoken language. That does not help us streamline our conversation and collaboration. So learning how to write queries, how to write some JavaScript, some C#, some Java, yes, it will allow you to think a little bit or understand a little bit of how like developers might be thinking, but it ends there. It does not help with the actual problem solving, right? So my answer to them is usually like, yeah, no Java, no JavaScript, nothing like that. Just learn better English, and not in an insulting manner. Because it's like, well, I was born and raised speaking English. What are you talking about? It's like, yes, you have, but in many cases in today's world, you're in a team where you have like maybe 2 or 3 people who were born and raised speaking English. Everybody else speaks English as a second language, not the same thing. So thing that when we grow up learning to speak a certain language, there are things we just take for granted. We don't even know why we use certain words for that. People coming from a different background, different cultures, different languages, yeah, we might be speaking English, but there are words that are thrown around as like, that word, I haven't seen that used in this kind of context. What does it even mean? So learning to streamline the spoken language to facilitate the conversation and the collaboration amongst the team, that would be the skill to develop. That's the one that's going to yield the most value. So cool. Questions, Jordan, what's coming up there for us?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have another question over here by Scott. And I think you touched on it a little bit at least. Should
Okay.
every role be involved in all conversations so that they can have input, or should skill focused meetings happen offline with updates made during stand-up? And is there a perfect or preferred balance in your opinion? And that
Beautiful.
continues you a little bit, but if you want
Yeah.
to go ahead, and I can read the next section after.
Okay. Yes, I do have some input there, some thoughts on that. It varies, right? It varies on the composition of the team, the background from the team, where different people are coming from, the kind of experiences they've had, the kind of restrictions they might have on time, right? Where you may not have everybody available to be in the same room for all conversations. So for me, part of my journey has been to first understand all of these constraints and then start tapping in to say, okay, for this meeting here, I would like to have all the roles here so that we can get everybody on the same page here, so that we all know where we are going. As the team evolves, as the group evolves and matures within its project, its understanding of each other, then we can start picking and choosing and say, okay, for this kind of feature, we don't need everybody in the room. We need maybe the UX designer, if there is one available, or the developer who's the best at creating UX, not UI, UX. Have those working ahead of the team, having some of those conversations, coming up with some, like maybe some whiteboarding that then they will pull in the remaining members of the team to share their findings and continue the conversation from there. Maybe at that point, QA folks would come in to start asking, okay, in order to ensure quality of that, have we thought about this context, this context, this scenario, right? So it's not like I don't have a magic bullet answer for that. It does vary based on the team's composition, experience, and all of that. So during certain times, I do have everybody in the room if that's going to yield value. And then from there, we start picking and choosing who should be when, to do what, where, and all that. All right. Excellent. Let's move on a little bit further down since I have some more slides I want to get to, and then we can go back to some more questions here. Clarifying context. This is an example that I always bring back as something very important to me, and I like moving that forward. Whenever I'm in a conversation, I've been in the US for 22 years now, but still, every time I'm in a social conversation and somebody said, "Oh, last time was great," it's like, "Oh, what happened?" "Oh, we went to the game." "What game?" "Oh, it was a football game." That is the image that comes in my mind. 20 years that I've been in the US, football, that is the image that comes at the forefront of my mind immediately. 20 years ago, that was the only image. It took me a while to figure, oh, okay, no, American football, that's what they meant. Nowadays, I just shortened that distance. So the first image that comes, football, is that what you're seeing, but I'm quicker at going, oh, not that one, it's the hand egg sport, right? I don't want to drive any of my US friends nuts with that. It's just a recurring joke, right? But it's just the importance of like, we have to take those into account. Or even like, even though I'm in the US, there's a group of people that if they say, oh, last night I was watching a football game, I know what they mean because I know their background. I know they mean soccer, the word here, but they are using the word football. And like, I know because I know where they come from and I know that's what they mean. So the context is immediately clear. So the conversation just flows. How does that play into user stories and software projects and all that? Same thing. And say that you have a user story that along the line it says something along the lines of, oh, we need to enter two numbers, add them up, and produce a result. Right? A developer would quickly say, oh, hold my beer. I can write that for you real quick. Like, not so fast. I didn't tell you what we are adding. What if I say that we are adding 2 meters to 3 yards, or 2 inches to 3 feet, or 2 gallons to 3 liters? And I want the result to be in some other kind of unit, right? Because maybe that's the problem you're trying to solve, right? Is to add from different, or like currencies. Maybe I'm adding 2 US dollars to 3 Canadian dollars, and I want the result to be in Mexican pesos. Because it depends on who's the people entering the data, what unit do they have on hand, how do they think, and the people who will be consuming that result, what are they thinking? How does it go in their brain? Like, I do not think naturally in feet. So when I go to the doctor and they say, how tall are you? What comes to mind? It's not in feet. That it never made sense. It will never make sense for me. So what comes to mind is 182, because that's a meter, 82 centimeters, right? It takes me a while to go to, okay, they want it in feet. It's a 5 something, 5'11", right? That every time there is this disconnect to understand the context, it just opens the room for interpretation in a way that maybe a product owner is explaining a user story and people's mind in the room are going like all different places because they don't have the same context. So you're losing time. We cannot make time. We can make best use of our time. So make sure people understand the context of what's being talked about. So here's an example that I got a few years ago in a user story. In order to quickly navigate through sales orders, which my mind goes like, why do we want to quickly navigate through sales orders? Why does it have to be so fast? As a salesperson, I want to see a list of all existing orders. Like, why do you want to see a list of all the existing orders? Because that's going to make it even harder to go quickly. Because if the business has been running for 5 years and you have tons of orders, within 5 years, you're going to have like thousands, maybe millions of orders. Do you want to quickly go through all of them? Is that really what you want to do? Because the developer, again, could quickly go and say, oh, that's a select star from sales order, and then show that in a table. Oh, you can paginate that table, right? You can make it very fancy. It's like, but why? I know that you can do that, but why? Does it solve the problem? Well, as I asked the business about that, it's like, why is that important? Let's talk about that, right? Because at that moment, it's like the salesperson, what does that salesperson look like? This person who's like really bored doing their work at their desk? Is it this person on their desk, with a nice, maybe a 2-screen setup, calling on a phone that's like, maybe not an old phone here, it's just a vintage, this seller just likes some vintage stuff, like having the conversation with their customers? Or is it somebody like sitting at a coffee shop trying to communicate with a customer using their cell phone? Like, what is the situation? Because for each one of those, the solution is going to be different, right? So that is important, having that kind of conversation. So a refined version of that story came up like this. In order to better assist the customer and quickly move on to the next customer, as a person taking a call working at my desk, so that gives me a little bit more context, right? Okay, the salesperson is sitting at their desk, so I can assume they have, a big monitor at least, hopefully more than one screen, gives me ideas of what to do. And I understand that they have people on the phone and they're trying to better assist that one customer, right? And then as soon as possible, move on to the next one to assist as best as they can and then move on. I want to quickly see the customer's open sales orders. So the customer that I have on the phone, because they're likely calling because of some open sales orders that they have, or have access to the pending ones. Maybe there's some sort of pending order that has already shipped and they haven't received. I want to quickly go to that order. So it diminishes that surface area of the conversations. Like now we can picture so many different solutions for this as to how we can prepare the data that we're displaying, the information that we're displaying to the salesperson so that they can have that on hand. And you can even like integrate with the phone system to know what other customer is on the line so that you can prefetch that data and put it someplace that once the guy is moving on to that customer, the data is already available. Everything about that customer is already available. All the answers that the customer is calling in for, it's already there, right? But it only comes from this kind of clarification and conversation. So from that point on, when we hear salesperson, we don't think the salesperson on the left here, right? The old car salesperson. We think this guy here. That's the immediate image that comes to mind. So the mind is already framed where it needs to be to streamline the conversation, making better use of our time. Remember, put things into context. Story mapping, just not having the uh, only having the stories, that's not enough, because now you have 100 stories and you are losing the big picture. If it's just a list of stories one after the other, it's like, how do they go together? So looking to story mapping, very powerful tool to identify what's your customer segment. Like in your business, you have customers, you have sales reps, you have fulfillment vendor, you have fulfillment clerks, network operators. Those are the segments that you are serving. What are the value propositions? Well, we need them to be able to manage orders, to manage the fulfillment of those orders, the provisioning. Those are the value propositions for this business. Okay, what are the activities that they perform to achieve those goals, right? Well, to manage order, they need to enter order, need to process order. To manage fulfillment, they need to process the fulfillment of the order. They need to submit that to the vendor. They need to track shipping progress. And then underneath that, what are the features that enable those activities? Those are the user stories, right? So underneath enter order, you see enter order info, submit order, view the order, submit order with accessory, whatever that means within this context. Save the order info, submit with features, update, do this, do that. All of different bits and pieces. And notice that it goes left to right, because that shows you a business workflow for this specific context here, right? So you can see where it starts, who's related to that, what are their goals, right? Which has everything to do with UX, user experience. What are these people trying to achieve, right? So you can see that in a timeline in that manner. What are the activities that they need to perform to achieve those goals? And then break it down into stories. By having this kind of visualization, you can also help with prioritization, because you can say, we could prioritize horizontally like this, where you're going to take the entire workflow, only that first thin layer. So we're only going to work on the stories that are on that first line, that first green line there. Enter order info, submit, receive the order, fulfill the order, receive the fulfillment, da da da. You do that part, that very thin layer, so that you can validate the entire workflow. And then you start going down vertically. By doing it like this, by the time you get to the end of the workflow and you put that in front of people, they will help you refine the user stories that sit below, like from the second row down. Because by then, they may identify things like, oh, that last story there, add optional mobile feature. Maybe we don't need that at all. things have changed, or now that we are seeing the solution in front of us, we are seeing actually other things that we can do, right? So instead of going vertically and like putting all of your time and effort going down one vertical slice like that, look across with the workflow. This is one possibility. Depending on the situation, maybe what you actually need is to take one chunk, like enter order, and go all the way down. Most of the projects that I've worked on, that's hardly ever the case. The horizontal one, taking one thin slice, going through the entire value proposition there is usually what resonates and yields the most value to businesses. That's how we deliver results, right? People are paying us to deliver results to them, and this approach will help us with that. All right, let me quickly go through some of these slides here because we are coming up on time. Acceptance criteria is part of user story. So if we have a user story like the one we were seeing before, an acceptance criteria could be written in the following manner. Given the current user is a marketing manager and duplicate addresses exist, when sending direct mail, then only unique addresses get mail. This is also referred to as gherkin, like gherkin language, when you write given, when, then. I usually just tell people given, when, then. Because if I say gherkin, it's like, what the heck is that? Given, when, then. Given a certain context, when something happens, then I want this following outcome. It's just easier to coach people into that. If we have acceptance criteria written or taught in that manner, then we can write tests for that. We can automate that. So that same feature we're just talking about could be implemented as a unit test, like what you see on the screen on the left. If you're following the arrange, act, assert approach, you could write it in that manner. In this case, any C# or Java developer would be able to read and kind of like follow along what's happening. A non-technical person would look at this as like, I don't get it. Like all the braces and the semicolons and all that, it's kind of fuzzy. Well, that test has come from that acceptance criteria. So why not write the test with that same format? So on the right here, it's still the same test, right? Given the current user is a marketing manager, duplicate addresses exist, the actual implementation of the test is further down in that file. Why is that important? Because somebody who's non-technical can read this and immediately understand the context of what we are trying to achieve here. Or even as a developer, if I haven't worked on that feature, I'll have to be asking questions like, oh, we have a mailing service. It has a get addresses method that returns an array. It's like, I don't want to be thinking like that first. I want to be thinking like the thing on the right. That's the thing in English, how we articulate the problem. Once I get my mind around that, then I can go deeper into the technical aspect of that feature. The thing on the right, I'm no shy of showing that to a business person, to my stakeholders. I've brought things like this up in sprint reviews, where they see a little bit into like the technical world, how we're doing things, and they like that. It builds confidence. It creates transparency as to how we are addressing things, and it inspires confidence. It's like, oh, they are writing their code in the same way that we talk. I like these guys. It's less black magic. Like if they show me all those like squiggly things in a code editor, I don't understand that. But this, yeah, I can actually follow that along, right? I'm confident that they're actually delivering what I need at the end of the sprint. So from that standpoint, English first, please think in English. I don't care how many programming languages you can read and write. Start with English or whichever spoken language you use to communicate with the people that you are serving. In writing code, also bring that down into the code. Like, oh, we said that the user is a marketing manager. I want to read the code like that. If user is marketing manager, something, because that came from the user story, from the acceptance criteria. Failure, send to unique addresses. Again, it came like we have some bits that are technical here, but the core bits of words there they resonate with the English words that we're using. Don't be too prescriptive, like given the database is loaded with books by Stephen King, when I visit products/books and I type Cujo in the search text box and I click the search button and the page shows results in a table and there's an add button and a label, like that's way too prescriptive. We don't want that. We want something that's more like this. Given books by Stephen King are available. I don't care if it's in the database, in a text file, if it's coming from an API, JSON, I don't care. I'm just saying, given books by Stephen King are available. When I search for any of those books, then I can add any book from the list to my shopping cart. That's it. That's the level of detail that, I like to, again, promote conversation, encourage conversation, and then let either UX designers figure out what is the best user experience to enable this goal, this value proposition. Then take the next step. What is the best user interface to enable that experience? And then we write the automated tests for that. We write the unit test, integration test, whichever kind of test you need that will better ensure that you're going to deliver that value, document and deliver that value. So reviewing what we got so far, I'll quickly go through this. Listen first when user stories are being communicated. Make sure that everybody has the same image in their mind when we're discussing those stories. Build the acceptance criteria where you can go down the scenarios that we're covering for that user story. Clarify expectations through those means. From there, you can write your tests, your specs, right, to document that your understanding, the team's understanding of the feature, the whys of that. Keep commitments that way. As you present in sprint review and you're sharing solutions with others, demonstrate respect, because different people will address certain problem solving in different manners. Listen, understand their mindset. Where are they going with that? What has made them arrive at that conclusion? And then iterate, get better at communicating what is it that we're trying to achieve here, and why is it that we need that? So with that, you can grow those around you. Devs can get better at TDD praxis, BDD, clean code, QA, the way that our QA folks will report defects, the challenges that they have testing something. You can engage our QA folks into helping us write those given when thens and flush out the language that we use for those given when thens. You get UX designers also seeing things from the problem domain standpoint and not from the technical standpoint. Scrum masters, product owners focusing on the why we are working on certain stories. What value does it bring? Do they bring? Right? And that's how we're bridging that gap between the two spheres there, making better use of our time. So wrapping things up, as then I look at questions here, better user stories, better deliverables, period. If you increase the quality of your user story, you're gonna be definitely providing or delivering better results. For better stories, improve the collaboration through conversation. And by the way, if you have better user stories, the quality of your code is gonna go up as well. If you make your code, you write your code based on that clear communication you've had, the quality of the code is going to go up the same way. Writing a story in English is cheaper than writing code in any programming language. Learn how to use English effectively, because you walk up to a board, you write given when then in order to show that. If that's wrong, you erase, you start again. If you commit to writing code, creating tables, creating databases, pushing that against source control, creating PRs, then there's a lot more work to correct that, right? So this is what's cheaper in business, like, making sure that we're making effective use of their resources. So Jordan, sorry, I had to pack like a lot of stuff there. What are like the go-to questions we have here?
Absolutely. Yeah, no. a lot of stuff to cover. I think you did really good. We
Yeah.
haven't had any more questions come
Okay.
in the last few minutes, but as we wrap things up, if you do have anything else you'd like to say or ask Claudio, now is the time.
Yep.
While people get typing, do you have anything else you'd like to say, Claudio?
Just a reminder that my contact information is here on the board. Um, you have my email. You have, please, go to this feedback form that I've put together so they can learn a little bit more from you. Like, what are the things that resonated with you? What are challenges? Maybe there are things that I told you right now that you might be going like, yeah, I tried that, it didn't work. I would love to hear those stories, right? Oh, I tried selling TDD to my people, they didn't like it. I tried selling BDD to my product owners, they didn't like it. I would love to hear those stories because that's how I've been honing in these skills, learning from different people, different challenges that they have faced over time, and then finding ways to help them, like bridge that gap or mediate those issues. So please reach out, and if you're interested in getting a copy of this slide deck, same thing, just reach out so that we can continue this conversation because it's a lot. I know that I've added a lot of content here and compressed that into an hour-long conversation.
Absolutely. We did actually have a couple questions come in. We have one in the Q&A section.
Yeah.
Is there a way that you can share this presentation?
Absolutely. So yes,
I
please
think
get to the feedback form there so I can, you can get me your email and I'm going to send that directly to you and we can continue this
absolutely.
conversation.
Claudio doesn't bite, so definitely reach out to Claudio. He'll hook you up with all this information.
Yeah.
And if you would like to continue the conversation with him, I'm sure he would be more than happy to do that. We had one other question come in by Christian, sorry. So a lot of this, to kind of summarize, is how we get increased communication skills between programmers, development teams, and the business side. Is that kind of how you would wrap this up, I guess?
Yes, that is the main thing here. It's like for too long, developers, we have worked in isolation from the business, and that just hurts, right?
Mhm.
The closer together we are, if we improve that communication, then we can deliver those results quicker and better, right? So it's all about that.
Awesome. No, I agree. I really have like once you start bridging that gap, the amount of quality and improvement in communication, everyone's just overall happier because we're all on the same page. It's just less confusion. It just really makes everything transparent. Um,
Yeah.
we do have one more question come up. Oh, I'll handle that message separately. Anyway, yeah, I think that's all the questions in the chat right now. Thank you so much, Claudio, for jumping on and giving your talk. We always love having you on here.
Yeah.
To everyone else on the call, I would really appreciate your time. And if you have any other questions or just want to get to know improving a little bit more, definitely feel free to reach out to Claudio, me, or any of us here. We're always happy to kind of have those conversations. We do have another great talk coming up. Actually, I see Martino is in the chat right now. Um, it's another lunch and learn. It'll be next week, same day, same time. The topic will be UX mindset, and again, that's by Martino Liu. I did post a link for it, but it doesn't seem to be on our website yet. Should be up there very shortly, so just keep an eye on that website. Keep clicking that refresh button. Probably today or tomorrow, it should be live. And I did post another link if you happen to be in Houston. We do have a code launch event coming up. It's one of our favorite events here at Improving. It's very startup oriented. It's a little bit of a startup competition. Very, very fun. And if you're interested in going, we have free tickets available right now. I did post the link for that. So if you have any questions about code launch or anything else, definitely reach out to one of us. And that's all I have. We'll see you guys next week. Claudio, did you have anything else you want to share?
That's it. Just a big thank you for you, Jordan, for producing the show here, and everybody
Absolutely.
who joined in. And I hope you got something out of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and we hope you have a great day. Oh, wait, I just see one question coming about Code Launch. Is Code Launch a good place to learn about better coding, or is it just a place for competition? Well, there's a sort of a hackathon that happens for that event. It is sort of kind of going on in the background. I wouldn't say it's a great place to really learn to code, but it's more startups competing kind of against each other, giving the pitches, showing what development was done during the hackathon. It's a little bit of a prototype that the teams build for them. So if you're interested on how the hackathon went, you could definitely talk to the different startups and their teams. I'm sure they'd be more than happy to kind of share that process, but there won't be any live coding or anything like that at the event. But it is very fun, and we do bring in a lot of people. So hopefully we'll see you all there. All right. Thank you, everyone, again. Have a great day.